Theodore, step away from that man. Right now. The command slices through the polite hum of the gala, sharp and cold as a surgeon's scalpel. In an instant, the grand atrium of the Roth Philharmonic Center falls dead silent. Laughter chokes in throats. Champagne flutes freeze mid-air. 100 heads, adorned with jewels and status, turn as one, their focus snapping to a single point of breathtaking social horror. Isolde Roth is on her feet, a pillar of incandescent fury by a table draped in white linen. Her face is pale, her knuckles white where she grips the back of her chair. Her son, Theo, stands 20 feet away, his small frame silhouetted against the gray, shapeless uniform of a janitor. Reese Calder feels a hot wave of panic wash over him. The janitor. That's him. He's that man. His heart slams against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, suffocating quiet. His trash cart, with its squeaking wheel, feels less like a tool and more like an anchor, holding him in place under the glare of 100 hostile spotlights. Theo doesn't move. He's a small, defiant statue, ignoring the iron will of his billionaire mother. His hand is clenched in the coarse fabric of Reese's sleeve. Just moments ago, Reese was humming a tune under his breath, a forgotten lullaby his wife used to sing. It was a private thought made sound. But then the boy, who the staff all know is selectively mute, had walked right up to him. He had looked Reese in the eye and hummed the melody back, a single, perfect, questioning note. Now, in the face of his mother's command, Theo does it again. He tugs on Reese's sleeve, a desperate, insistent gesture. He hums the next phrase of the song, his eyes pleading. It's a sound that asks not just for a melody, but for help. It's a request for rescue. Reese knows he should step back. He should peel the boy's fingers from his arm, apologize, and vanish. His supervisor is already moving in, his face a mask of terror. This is his job on the line, the roof over his daughter's head, the fragile stability he has fought so hard to maintain. But he can't look away from the boy's face. He sees the raw, unshielded hope there, a tiny flicker of light in a deep well of loneliness. It's a look that cuts through the noise of the gala, the fear in his own heart, and the fury in Isolde Roth's eyes. It's the look of a child who is finally reaching out. And Reese can't bring himself to let go. He makes a choice. In a single, fluid motion that defies every instinct for self-preservation, he kneels. The worn fabric of his trousers meets the plush carpet, and he is now eye to eye with the boy. The world seems to fall away. There is no crowd, no danger, only this small, silent child asking for a song. Reese offers a small, tight smile, and he hums the reply. His voice is quiet, unsteady, but it rises to meet the boy's note, weaving a simple two-part harmony that is so achingly real, it makes the gilded room feel like a cheap imitation of life. It lasts only a moment, a fragile bubble of connection in a sea of judgment. The bubble pops. "That's enough," a man's voice hisses beside him. Jarrett, Isolde's chief of staff, grabs his shoulder, his fingers digging in like claws. "Get up! Get out! You're done!" The touch shatters the moment. Reese flinches as if burned, shame and fear flooding back in. He starts to scramble to his feet. "Leave him." Isolde's voice is quiet now, but it carries an authority that is absolute. Jarrett instantly releases his grip, stepping back as if slapped. Isolde glides forward, her movements impossibly smooth. She doesn't look at Reese. Her gaze is fixed on her son, who watches the janitor with a look of profound, heartbreaking loss. She signals to a security guard. "Take Theo to the car." The guard moves in, gently taking the boy's arm. Theo makes a tiny, choked sound, a wounded noise that is more devastating than any scream. Then, finally, Isolde Roth turns her eyes on Reese. They are cold, analytical, and utterly unreadable. But beneath the ice, a desperate fire rages. She assesses him, not as a man, but as an inexplicable variable in her perfectly controlled equation. "My office," she says, her voice barely a whisper, yet it echoes in the silent hall. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. She turns and walks away without waiting for a reply, the stunned crowd parting before her like a wave. She leaves Reese kneeling on the floor, a janitor who has just committed an unforgivable sin. He made a silent boy sing, and in doing so, he showed a billionaire that there was something in the world her power could not control. The next morning, the sun rises, but it brings no warmth to Reese's small apartment. It only illuminates the dust motes dancing in the air and the faint crack in the ceiling above his bed. He's been awake for hours, the scene from the gala replaying in his mind like a broken record. The silent room, the boy's pleading eyes, the cold fury on Isolde Roth's face. Fired. Jarrett's voice echoes in his head. He's definitely fired. The only question is whether Ms. Roth intends to do it personally, perhaps with an added lecture on the audacity of the lower class. "Daddy, you're burning the toast!" Nina's voice pulls him back. He turns from the window to see his 7-year-old daughter sitting at their small kitchen table, a crayon in one hand, her brow furrowed with concern. Smoke wafts from the toaster. Reese quickly unplugs it and pries out 2 blackened squares of bread. "Sorry, sweet pea," he says, his voice rough. "My head's in the clouds today." "Is it because of the lady from the party?" she asks, not looking up from her drawing of a purple cat with wings. Reese stops. He'd told her a simplified version when he got home late last night, leaving out the part where he likely lost his job. "What about her?" "You said her little boy doesn't talk," Nina says, choosing a green crayon. "But he sang with you. Maybe she's happy about that." Reese manages a weak smile. Maybe. But he knows better. People like Isolde Roth aren't happy when their perfect narratives are disrupted. They aren't grateful. They are angry. He scrapes the burnt toast into the bin and puts 2 more slices in, watching it like a hawk this time. The weight of the 10 a.m. meeting sits like a stone in his stomach. By 9:45, he's standing in the service hallway of the Roth Philharmonic Center. His supervisor, a man named Henderson, corners him by the lockers. "Hayes," he says, his voice low, his eyes darting around nervously. "Whatever she says up there, just agree with it. Apologize. Don't make it worse." "I was just going to tell the truth," Reese replies quietly. Henderson winces. "The truth won't pay your rent. Just be sorry. That's all people like them ever want." The elevator ride to the penthouse is silent and swift. It's a different elevator from the service one he usually takes, all polished steel and soft, recessed lighting. It feels like an ascent to a different planet. The doors open into a reception area so vast and empty, it feels like a modern art gallery. A single receptionist sits behind a desk that looks like a block of carved ice. She doesn't ask his name. "She's waiting for you," she says, gesturing toward a pair of towering wooden doors. Reese pushes them open and steps inside. Isolde Roth's office is less a room and more a statement. One entire wall is a floor-to-ceiling window with a god's-eye view of the city below. There is no clutter, no photos, no personal effects. Just a long black desk, 2 severe-looking chairs, and Isolde Roth herself, standing by the window, her back to him. "I trust you understand the gravity of the situation you created last night," she says, her voice as cool and sterile as the room. Reese clears his throat. "I understand I'm going to be fired." She turns slowly. Today, she's in a simple but brutally expensive-looking black dress. Her expression is unreadable. Firing you would be the simplest solution. It is not, however, the most effective one. She walks toward the desk, but doesn't sit. She circles it like a shark circling its prey. "My son has not spoken a word to me, his teachers or his therapists, in 382 days. He has been surrounded by the finest musical minds in the world. He has a Steinway in his bedroom that he refuses to touch. And yet, last night, he communicated with you." She stops in front of him, her eyes searching his face for something. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Reese says honestly. "I was just humming." The melody, she presses. What was it? It was just a lullaby. Something I used to know. Isolda's eyes narrow. She doesn't believe in just a lullaby. In her world, everything is technique, method, and execution. You have a method, she states, as if it's an established fact. Some therapeutic technique you've developed. You will teach it to his psychologist, and you will engage with Theo twice a week, under my supervision. She moves to her desk, opens a drawer, and pulls out a checkbook. I am prepared to offer you $200,000 for 1 year of your service. It is more than you would make in a decade. Reese stares at her, then at the checkbook in her hand. A slow burn of anger begins in his chest. She thinks this is a transaction. She thinks the moment between him and her son was a trick he performed, a service he can now sell. She has taken something pure and put a price tag on it. No, he says. The word hangs in the air. Isolde blinks, a flicker of genuine shock crossing her features. It's clear she has not heard that word often in her life. Excuse me? No, thank you, Reese says, his voice gaining strength. You don't understand what happened last night. It wasn't a method. It wasn't a technique. Your son heard a song and he felt something. He reached out. That's all. And I am prepared to pay you handsomely to ensure he continues to reach out. You can't buy it, Reese says, taking a step forward. He's no longer intimidated. He's just sad for her and for the boy. You can't write a check and have a connection delivered to your door. That's not how it works. He reaches into the back pocket of his worn jeans and pulls out a small, creased piece of paper. It's a flyer, printed in black and white on cheap paper. He unfolds it and places it on the vast, empty expanse of her black desk. This is where I go on weekends, he says. It's a music group for kids in my neighborhood. We call it the Harmony Project. It's in a church basement. It's loud, it's messy, and it's free. Isolde stares at the flyer as if it's a dead insect. Reese meets her gaze, his own eyes clear and steady. Music isn't a prescription, Ms. Roth. It's a conversation. If you want your son to have that conversation, he's welcome to come. There's no contract, and there's no charge. He turns and walks toward the doors, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence. He doesn't look back. He leaves her there, a billionaire in her sterile fortress, alone with a checkbook in one hand and a crumpled flyer for a church basement in the other. Two worlds that have no business ever touching. For 2 days, the flyer sits on Isolde's desk like a stain. She hasn't touched it since Reese left it there, a flimsy piece of paper that holds more power in the room than she does. She has tried to ignore it. She has tried to work. She signs contracts, fields calls from Zurich and Tokyo, and dismisses a senior analyst for a fractional error in a quarterly projection. She wields her power like a shield, but it does nothing to quiet the silence in her penthouse. On the 3rd day, Dr. Albrecht, Theo's 4th and most expensive therapist, comes to the apartment. He brings with him a new set of diagnostic tools and a gentle, condescending smile. Isolde watches from the doorway of the music room as he tries to engage Theo. He speaks in soft, infuriating tones. He places a small, beautiful cello before the boy. Let's just make one sound, Theo, Dr. Albrecht coos. Any sound you like. It will be our secret. Theo stares at the cello as if it's a venomous snake. He doesn't move. He doesn't blink. He simply retreats further into himself, building his fortress of silence thicker, brick by brick. After an hour, Dr. Albrecht sighs, defeated. He has regressed since the incident at the gala. He tells Isolde in the hallway. The brief breakthrough seems to have been an anomaly, perhaps triggered by stress. We must be patient. Patience. The word feels like an insult. Isolde has built an empire on the ruins of patience. She doesn't wait for things, she makes them happen. After the therapist leaves, she walks to her desk, picks up the cheap, wrinkled flyer, and reads the words again. The Harmony Project. Saturdays, 11 a.m. St. Jude's Church basement. She crumbles it in her fist, the paper crackling in protest. The thought of sending her son, an Astaroth, to a church basement in some forgotten corner of the city is absurd. It's an admission of failure on a scale she cannot comprehend. She walks to the wastebasket and drops the crumpled ball of paper inside. But that night, she hears it. A sound from Theo's room. She pushes his door open a crack. He's asleep, but in his sleep, he is humming. It's the lullaby. A faint, heartbreakingly lonely sound in the dark. The next morning, a Saturday, she stands before her son. She doesn't ask. She commands. "Get dressed, we're going out." A sleek black town car, the kind that usually ferries her to board meetings and private airfields, pulls up in front of the crumbling stone steps of St. Jude's Church. The driver, a man named Marcus, who has been with her for 10 years, looks at the peeling paint on the church doors as if he's expecting a hostile attack. Isolde doesn't get out. She can't. Her pride holds her hostage in the plush leather seat. "Take him inside," she tells Marcus, "to the basement, and wait for him." Marcus looks at her, his expression carefully neutral, but she can see the shock in his eyes. He nods, gets out, and opens the door for Theo. The boy looks up at the church, then back at the car, a flicker of fear on his face. But then, as if remembering something, he walks up the steps and disappears inside with Marcus. The basement of St. Jude's smells of dust, lemon-scented cleaner, and old wood. The lights are fluorescent, casting a humming, yellowish glow on a circle of mismatched chairs. In the center of the circle sits Reese, a worn acoustic guitar resting on his knee. Nina is beside him, shaking a maraca made from a plastic bottle filled with rice. A dozen other kids, ranging in age from 6 to 16, are scattered around, holding battered instruments. The door at the top of the stairs creaks open. Marcus, looking profoundly out of place in his black suit, walks a silent Theo down the steps. All chatter stops. The kids stare. Reese looks up, his expression unreadable for a beat. Then a small, welcoming smile touches his lips. "Hey," he says, his voice calm and warm. "You must be Theo. We have a spot for you right here." He pats an empty chair next to Nina. Marcus gives Reese a curt nod and retreats back up the stairs like a soldier escaping enemy territory. Theo stands by the door, a small, frozen figure. The other kids whisper among themselves. Nina gets up, walks over to Theo, and holds out her hand. "It's okay," she says. "My dad doesn't make you sing if you don't want to." Theo looks at her hand, then at her open, smiling face. Slowly, hesitantly, he takes it. She leads him to the empty chair. Reese starts to play. It's not a complex piece. It's a simple, 3-chord progression, full of warmth and rhythm. "All right, crew," he says. "Let's make some noise. Find the beat." The room explodes into a joyful, chaotic symphony. A teenage boy with purple hair bangs out a rhythm on an overturned bucket. A pair of twin girls strum ukuleles, mostly out of tune. Nina shakes her maraca with infectious glee. It's not perfect. It's not polished. It's the furthest thing from the music Isolde Roth commands. But it's alive. Theo sits rigid in his chair, his hands in his lap, watching everything with wide, overwhelmed eyes. Reese doesn't push him. He doesn't even look at him. He just keeps playing, his voice weaving a simple melody through the happy noise, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiles at the other kids. 10 minutes pass, then 20. Theo's shoulders slowly begin to relax. He watches a young girl happily tapping a small triangle. He watches Reese's fingers move on the guitar strings. He listens to the laughter. Then, his eyes land on a small djembe drum sitting on the floor. It's old, the skin worn smooth. No one is using it. He looks at Reese, who is absorbed in the music. He looks at Nina, who gives him an encouraging nod. Slowly, as if moving through water, Theo slides off his chair. He crawls over to the drum. He places his small hands on the skin. He hesitates, his breath held tight in his chest. Then, he taps it. Tap. A small, quiet sound. He looks up, his eyes wide, as if expecting to be reprimanded. Reese catches his eye from across the circle and gives him a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Go on. Theo taps it again. Tap, tap, tap. He's found the rhythm. A hesitant smile, the first genuine smile he has worn in a year, begins to form on his lips. It's a small, fragile thing, but it lights up his entire face. Down the street, parked in the shadows of an old oak tree, Isolde Roth sits behind the tinted window of her car. She lowers the window a crack, but she can't hear the music, only the faint, distant sound of traffic. She stares at the church door, her heart a tangled knot of hope, fury, and shame. It has been 45 minutes, an eternity. Just as she's about to tell Marcus to go fetch him, the church door opens. The kids spill out, laughing and chasing each other, and among them is Theo. He isn't laughing, but he isn't closed off either. There's a lightness to his step she hasn't seen in a year, and on his face is the ghost of that smile. He sees the car and his expression becomes guarded again, the light dimming, but Isolde has seen it, and the sight of it cracks something deep inside her, a fissure in the foundation of her perfectly controlled world. The routine repeats for 3 more weeks. Every Saturday morning, the Blacktown car delivers Theo to the steps of St. Jude's. Every Saturday, Isolde watches from a distance, a prisoner in her own car, her pride a formidable warden. Through the tinted glass, she sees her son transform. He walks into the church a ghost and walks out 2 hours later with color in his cheeks and a light in his eyes. He still doesn't speak to her, but the silence between them is different now. It's less like a wall and more like a quiet field, waiting for rain. Today she can't stand it anymore. The not knowing, the waiting, the feeling of being completely irrelevant to her own son's healing. She gets out of the car. The air outside is cool and smells of damp earth and city exhaust. It's a smell she hasn't encountered in years. She pulls her cashmere coat tighter around herself and walks, not to the front door, but around the side of the church, her expensive heels sinking slightly into the soft grass. She finds what she's looking for. A low, rectangular basement window, its glass filmed with years of grime. She crouches down, her knees protesting, and peers inside. The scene is exactly as she imagined, chaotic, loud, and utterly devoid of the disciplined structure she reveres. Kids are laughing, a guitar is out of tune, and the boy with the purple hair is drumming on his bucket with unrestrained glee. But she sees more now. She sees Reese. He isn't teaching so much as presiding. He moves through the circle like a gentle current, his presence a quiet anchor in the joyful storm. He crouches down to help a little girl whose fingers can't find the right chord, not moving her hand for her, but just pointing, patient, until she finds it herself. He catches the eye of a shy teenager hiding in the back and gives him a small, encouraging nod that makes the boy sit up a little straighter. He sees everything. Then she sees him with Nina. His daughter climbs onto his lap as he plays, her small head resting against his chest. He doesn't miss a beat, simply adjusts his arm around her and keeps strumming, kissing the top of her head. It's a gesture of such casual, profound love that it makes Isolde's chest ache. It's a language she recognizes intellectually but has never known how to speak. The class ends. The kids spill out, chattering and happy. Isolde straightens up, her back stiff, her heart pounding. She walks back to the front of the church and waits by the bottom of the steps, feeling exposed and uncertain. Reese and Nina are the last to emerge. Nina is holding a drawing, and Reese is carrying his guitar case. He sees Isolde standing there and stops, his expression becoming guarded. "Ms. Roth," he says, his voice neutral. She starts, then stops, unsure of what she was doing. "I wanted to understand your process." The words sound clinical and absurd, even to her. Reese looks down at Nina. "Sweet pea, can you go wait with Marcus for a minute? I need to talk to this lady." Nina eyes Isolde curiously, then nods and scampers toward the black car. When she's gone, Reese turns back to Isolde. "There's no process," he says simply. "We just make noise and try to be kind to each other while we do it." "It's more than noise," Isolde insists, stepping closer. "Theo is different. He's calmer, he's smiling. The changes are quantifiable. There must be a methodology." Reese gives a small, sad smile. "You think everything can be broken down into a formula, don't you?" He leans his guitar case against the stone railing. "There's no formula. I just listen. I have hired the best listeners in the world," she counters, her voice sharp with frustration. "They have degrees and doctorates in listening." "Maybe," Reese says, his gaze distant. "But do they know what it feels like to have a voice go missing from your life?" The question catches her off guard. It's personal, and it lands with unexpected weight. "What do you mean?" He looks at her, and for the first time, she sees the deep, settled grief in his eyes. It's not fresh or raw, but an old sorrow that has become a part of him, like the grain in wood. "My wife, Nina's mom, she was a singer," he says, his voice low and steady. "Her voice was the music in our house. It was the air we breathed. And then one day, it was just gone." He swallows, a barely perceptible movement. When you lose the most important sound in your world, you learn to pay attention to the quiet ones. You learn to listen for what's underneath the silence. Isolde stands perfectly still, the cool air raising goosebumps on her skin. The janitor, the man she tried to buy, is suddenly someone else entirely. He is a man who has been hollowed out by a grief she can't possibly imagine, and who has somehow managed to fill that space not with bitterness, but with a quiet, powerful empathy. "I'm sorry," she says, and the words are not a social nicety. They are real. He just nods, accepting her apology without ceremony. He picks up his guitar case. "Theo's a good kid," he says. "He's just got a lot of noise in his head. Sometimes you need to make a bigger, happier noise on the outside to drown it out." He starts to walk toward the car where Nina is now showing Marcus her drawing. "The lullaby," Isolde calls after him, the word leaving her lips before she can stop it. He pauses, his back still to her. "The song you were humming," she clarifies, her voice softer now. "Was it hers?" Reese doesn't turn around. He just stands there for a long moment. "Yeah," he says finally, his voice thick with unspoken memories. "It was hers." He walks away, leaving Isolde standing alone on the sidewalk in front of the crumbling church. She watches him get into the back of a beat-up sedan parked down the street, a car she hadn't even noticed. She watches him drive away, and for the first time, she isn't thinking about her son's silence. She's thinking about the janitors and the music that was lost there. The following Saturday, Isolde doesn't wait in the car. She walks into St. Jude's, her heels clicking with quiet authority on the worn linoleum of the hallway. She pushes open the heavy basement door just a crack and stands in the shadows at the top of the stairs, a silent observer in a world not meant for her. From her vantage point, she sees it all. She sees Theo, who now sits in the circle without being led. He holds a tambourine, and while his rhythm is hesitant, it's there. He taps it in time with the other children, his eyes focused, his face a study in concentration. He looks up when Nina laughs, a small, almost invisible smile touching his own lips. He is a child participating in the world again. Isolde's chest tightens. This ramshackle room, this man with a battered guitar, have given her son back a piece of himself that her fortune, her power, and her fierce, controlling love could not. The realization is both a relief and a wound. After the class, when the other parents have collected their children, Isolde walks down the stairs. The air is still buzzing with the phantom energy of the music. Reese is wiping down a small keyboard with a cloth, and Nina is carefully stacking hymnals in a corner. He seems better, Isolde says. It's the simplest, most honest thing she can think of. Reese looks up and gives her a genuine smile. He's a great kid. He's just finding his rhythm. He pauses his wiping. He looks for you at the window when he leaves now. Isolde blinks, surprised. He does? Every time, Reese confirms. He's glad you're here. The words hit her with an unexpected force. She, who had been hiding in shame and pride, was not a source of embarrassment for her son, but a source of comfort. She sinks onto one of the plastic chairs, feeling suddenly weary. His father was a musician too, she says, the confession slipping out into the quiet room. A cellist, brilliantly talented. Reese stops what he's doing and gives her his full attention. He doesn't speak, just waits, listening. I met him when he joined my orchestra, she continues, her gaze fixed on her hands, which are clasped tightly in her lap. I was already me, the Roth. He loved my passion, my drive, or so he said. But it's one thing to love a fire from a distance. It's another to live in its heart. She takes a shaky breath. I pushed him. I corrected his technique. I criticized his phrasing. I wanted him to be perfect, to be my equal. But the harder I pushed, the more he shrank. My light. It put out his. One day he just packed his cello and left. He said he needed to find his own music again, somewhere he wasn't living in my shadow. She finally looks up at Reese, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. And then Theo went quiet. It was like he took his father's advice. He found a place where my demands for perfection couldn't reach him. He built a fortress of silence, and I have no idea how to tear it down. Reese listens, his expression full of a deep, quiet understanding. He doesn't offer pity or platitudes. He walks over and sits in the chair next to her, leaving a respectful space between them. You didn't mean to build a wall between you, he says gently. You were just trying to protect him your way. Sometimes love feels like pressure when you're on the receiving end. He looks toward the corner where Nina is now humming to herself. And sometimes grief does the same thing. I almost gave up music entirely after Anya died. It hurt too much. It was a fortress for me too. They sit in silence for a long moment, two people from different universes, finding common ground in the quiet language of loss and imperfect love. Theo, who has been standing near the stairs, forgotten for a moment, walks over to them. He looks at his mother's face, at the wetness in her eyes. He looks at Reese, who gives him a small, reassuring nod. Then he turns his attention to Nina, who has finished her task and is now holding up a drawing for her father to see. It's a picture of the whole class, a chaotic jumble of smiling stick figures with instruments. Theo points to the figure holding the maracas. He opens his mouth. A sound emerges, not a hum this time, but a word. It's raspy from disuse, fragile as a bird's wing, but it is unmistakably clear. Nina. The world stops. Reese freezes, his eyes wide. Nina gasps, her drawing fluttering from her fingers. Isolde's breath catches in her throat. Her head snaps toward her son, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thinks it might break. Theo is looking at his own finger, pointing at the drawing, as if surprised by the sound he himself has made. He looks up at his mother, a flicker of fear in his eyes, as if he's broken a sacred rule. Isolde doesn't move. She can't. Tears she didn't know were there begin to stream down her face. She reaches out a trembling hand, not to touch him, but just to bridge the space between them. Yes, she whispers, her voice cracking. That's Nina. Theo looks at his mother's face, at her tears, and his fear melts away, replaced by a look of profound, dawning understanding. He just spoke, and the world didn't end. His mother wasn't angry. She was crying, but not with the cold fury he was used to. It was something else, something softer. He looks back at the man sitting beside her, the janitor with the sad eyes and the gentle voice. He takes a small step closer to him, looks him right in the eye, and says the second word he has spoken in over a year. "Thank you." The weeks that follow are filled with a quiet, tentative magic. Theo's 2 words become 3, then 10, then blossom into short, hesitant sentences. The fortress of silence, breached, begins to crumble stone by stone. He still prefers the language of music. A sharp tap on the drum to show frustration, a soft strum on a ukulele to show peace. But he no longer hides behind it. Isolde changes too. The rigid, imperious conductor is replaced by someone softer, more uncertain. She starts coming down into the basement during the Harmony project, no longer a shadowy figure on the stairs, but a quiet presence in the circle. She'll hand out juice boxes or help a small child untangle a guitar strap. The kids start calling her Ms. Izzy, a nickname that at first makes her flinch, but soon makes her smile. One afternoon, she finds Reese alone, tuning his guitar after a class. She watches his hands, the way they move with such confident, gentle purpose. "I don't know how to thank you," she says, her voice low. He looks up, his eyes warm. "There's nothing to thank me for. You're the one who was brave enough to walk down the stairs." He strums a chord, a bright, clear sound that fills the empty room. Besides, seeing Theo, that's all the thanks I need. Their easy truce, however, exists only within the peeling walls of the church basement. Outside, in the world Isolde commands, whispers have begun to circulate. A janitor, a church basement, the great Isolde Roth, a woman who lunches with presidents and critiques the world's most famous virtuosos, is spending her Saturdays in a rundown neighborhood with her staff. It starts as a curiosity among the orchestra musicians, then hardens into gossip among the administrative staff, and finally, it curdles into concern among the people who matter most, the board of directors. The summons comes via sterile email. The board requests your presence. Thursday, 4 p.m. There is no agenda. There doesn't need to be. The boardroom of the Roth Philharmonic is a cold, intimidating space on the top floor, designed to make people feel small. A long, polished mahogany table reflects the gray sky like a dark, still lake. Seated around it are 5 men and 2 women whose collective net worth could purchase a small country. At the head of the table is Lachlan Pierce, the chairman of the board, a man with a warm smile and eyes as cold as a morgue. He begins with pleasantries, praising the orchestra's last performance, but the cordial tone is thin as ice. "Isolde," Lachlan says, steepling his fingers, "we've been hearing some troubling reports. If this is about the fourth horn's intonation, I am already addressing it," she replies coolly. Lachlan's smile doesn't waver. "It's not about the horns, it's about your weekend activities." The other board members shift in their seats. A woman in pearls speaks up. "Isolde, we are all thrilled at the progress Theodore has made, truly, but your association with a member of the maintenance staff is unseemly." "His name is Reese Calder," Isolde says, her voice dangerously quiet, "and he is the reason my son is speaking again." "Be that as it may," Lachlan cuts in smoothly, "optics are everything. We have the annual acquisitions gala in 2 weeks. We are courting the Chevalier Foundation for a $10 million endowment. They are deeply conservative. The story of our artistic director consorting with a janitor, however personally fulfilling, is not a narrative that inspires confidence." Isolde feels a familiar, hot rage building in her chest. "So you would have me abandon the man who is healing my son to appease the prejudices of a potential donor?" "I would have you remember your primary duty is to this institution," Lachlan says, his voice losing its warmth. "You are not just a mother. You are the face of a $100 million brand. This Harmony project, it's a distraction. And this man, Calder, he is a liability." The word hangs in the air, ugly and venomous. Liability. The man who gave her back her son. The man who showed her a kindness she didn't know existed. "He is a good man," she says through gritted teeth. I have no doubt, Lachlan concedes. But in our world, perception is reality. And the perception is that you are behaving erratically, that your judgment is compromised. He leans forward, his expression now serious. The board has voted. We insist you sever all ties with Mr. Calder and his project. Immediately. The ultimatum lands like a physical blow. She looks around the table, at the faces of the people she has worked with for a decade. She sees no empathy, no understanding. She sees only risk assessment and damage control. And if I refuse, she asks, her voice a near whisper. Lachlan sits back, a look of genuine regret on his face. Then we would be forced to review your contract as artistic director. We would have to protect the Philharmonic from its leader. Don't make us do that, Isolde. You've built an empire. Don't let it be dismantled over a janitor. Isolde stands up, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. She feels the familiar chill of her old self. The ice that has protected her for years begin to creep back into her veins. It would be so easy to agree, to cut the tie, to protect her legacy. It is the move she has been trained her whole life to make. But then she thinks of Theo's smile. She thinks of Rhys's voice, explaining his grief. She thinks of the sound of a simple lullaby filling a silent room. She looks Lachlan Pierce dead in the eye. You have given me your decision, she says, her voice trembling with a rage she can barely contain. Now I will consider mine. She turns and walks out of the boardroom, the heavy doors closing behind her with a soft, final click. She is left alone in the silent hallway, caught between the empire she built and the small, fragile world that has just begun to save her. And she has no idea which one to choose. For a week, Isolde walks through her life like a ghost. She attends rehearsals and charity luncheons, her body moving through the familiar paces while her mind is trapped in the cold mahogany boardroom. Lachlan's words echo in her head. Protect the institution. Don't let it be dismantled over a janitor. The pressure is immense, a physical weight that settles in her chest. She avoids the church. She tells her driver she is busy on Saturday. Theo feels the change instantly. The new, easy warmth between them cools. His tentative sentences shrink back into single words. The light in his eyes dims. He sees the fortress walls of his mother going back up, and he retreats into the familiar safety of his own. The silence that returns to the penthouse is heavier than before, because now they both know what they are missing. By the second week, Isolde feels like she is suffocating. The empire she built feels like a gilded cage. On Friday evening, she sits at her piano, the one Theo refuses to touch, and tries to play. Her fingers feel like clumsy blocks of wood. The music is technically perfect, but emotionally dead. It is the sound of her life. She looks up and sees Theo standing in the doorway, watching her. His expression is not angry, just sad. In his eyes, she sees a question. Are you going to leave us too? That night, she doesn't sleep. She makes her choice. The annual acquisitions gala is the glittering jewel in the Philharmonic's crown. The grand atrium, the very room where her life collided with Rhys's, is now transformed. Ice sculptures drip onto beds of orchids. Diamonds glitter at the throats of women who glide across the floor like swans. The air hums with the electric current of money and power. Isolde moves through it all, a vision in a severe, elegant gown of emerald silk. She smiles, she shakes hands, she accepts compliments. She plays her part perfectly. Lachlan Pierce watches her from across the room, a satisfied look on his face. He believes he has won. He believes she has chosen her empire. Rhys is there too, on the late shift. He moves silently along the perimeter, emptying bins, his face a careful, neutral mask. But every so often, his eyes find hers across the crowded room. He doesn't look at her with judgment or disappointment. He just looks at her with that same steady, quiet understanding. It's almost more than she can bear. The time comes for the performance. Isolde walks to the podium, the rustle of her dress the only sound. The audience settles. The members of the Chevalier Foundation sit in the front row, their expressions expectant. Lachlan gives her a final, warning nod. Do not fail. She raises her baton. The orchestra launches into a complex, fiery symphony by Shostakovich, a piece full of technical brilliance and dissonant grandeur. It is the music of power, of struggle, of a world wrestling with itself. It is the music of the old Isolde. Her arms move with their usual flawless precision, but her heart is a block of ice. She feels disconnected, a puppet going through the motions. Halfway through the first movement, during a quiet passage for the strings, she glances toward the wings. Theo is standing there, just out of sight of the audience. He is watching her, his small face pale with anxiety. He isn't looking at her like a son watching his famous mother. He's looking at her like a child watching his only lifeboat, terrified it's about to drift away. And in that moment, everything becomes clear. The endowment, the brand, the empire, it's all just noise. The only thing that's real is the look on her son's face. She lowers her baton. The music falters, strings dying in a confused, discordant sigh. A gasp ripples through the audience. The musicians stare at her, their bows frozen over their instruments. Lachlan Pierce rises slightly from his seat, his face turning a dark, mottled red. Isolde turns to face the audience. Her heart is pounding, not with fear, but with a wild, exhilarating freedom. Perfection, she says, her voice clear and steady, amplified by the microphone on the podium. We spend our lives chasing it, in our music, in our careers, in our families. She pauses, her eyes scanning the sea of shocked faces until they find Reese, standing frozen by a service entrance. But perfection is an illusion. And tonight, I want to share something real. She turns back to her orchestra. They are watching her, their expressions a mixture of terror and awe. She gives them a small, fierce smile. From the top of the new page, she says softly. There is a frantic rustle of paper as the musicians find the sheet music she had placed on their stands herself that afternoon. She raises her baton again. She looks past her musicians, her gaze locking with Reese's across the vast, silent hall. She gives him a nod, a promise, an apology, and a declaration all in one. Then she brings her arm down. A new sound fills the hall. It is not the sound of struggle. It is the sound of a simple folk melody, a lullaby, the one Reese hummed to his son, the one Theo hummed back. She has spent the last week orchestrating it in secret. The melody, once so small and fragile, now swells with the rich, soaring voices of 100 instruments. The solo cello takes the lead, its voice full of a deep, heartbreaking sweetness. The strings sweep in beneath it, a wave of pure, unvarnished emotion. The music washes over the room. It is a sound of such profound, simple beauty that it bypasses the intellect and goes straight to the heart. An elderly woman in the front row dabs at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. The man from the Chevalier Foundation, so stern and serious before, listens with his head bowed, his expression softened. When the final gentle note fades into silence, the room is completely still for a beat. Then, the applause begins. It is not the polite, measured clapping from before. It is a roar, an eruption of feeling. People are on their feet, their faces alight, clapping not for a performance, but for a revelation. Isolde lowers her arms, her body trembling. She doesn't bow. She doesn't acknowledge the applause. She steps down from the podium, ignoring Lachlan's apoplectic face, and walks directly to the side of the stage. Theo runs to her. He doesn't speak. He just throws his arms around her waist and holds on tight. She buries her face in his hair, breathing in the scent of him, the solid, real presence of her son. She looks up, her eyes wet with tears, searching across the room. She finds Reese. He is smiling, and in his eyes she sees everything she has been searching for: acceptance, partnership, and a quiet, steady love. She has chosen, and she has never felt more powerful. The chaos backstage is a storm of its own. Lachlan Pierce intercepts Isolde before she can take 3 steps away from the stage, his face a mask of thunderous rage. The polite veneer has been stripped away, revealing the raw, frantic desperation of a man whose world has just been upended. "What was that?" he hisses, his voice low and shaking. He grabs her arm, his fingers digging into the delicate silk of her gown. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You just turned a century-old institution into a sideshow. You've made a mockery of everything we've built, of everything you've built." Isolde meets his gaze without flinching. She calmly removes his hand from her arm. "No, Lachlan, I just reminded them what music is for. Music is for discipline, for excellence," he retorts, his voice rising. "Not for sentimental lullabies. You humiliated us in front of the Chevalier Foundation. That endowment is gone, Isolde, gone." "On the contrary," a new voice says, calm and measured. They both turn. It's a distinguished silver-haired gentleman from the front row, the head of the Chevalier Foundation himself, Mr. Moreau. He approaches them, his eyes filled not with anger, but with a deep, thoughtful respect. He extends a hand to Isolde. "That, Madame Roth," he says, his voice carrying the faint, pleasant accent of his native France, "was the most honest and profoundly moving performance I have witnessed in 30 years. My foundation's mission is not to fund institutions that are perfect statues. It is to invest in human potential, in voices that have been silenced." He glances briefly toward the wings, where Theo is watching. "My own granddaughter. She's struggled to find her voice for many years. I understand, perhaps better than you think." He turns his gaze back to Lachlan, whose face has gone pale. "Your institution is impressive, Mr. Pierce, but tonight Madame Roth showed us its heart. We would be honored to fund whatever she does next." Lachlan stares, speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. The other board members who have gathered behind him look stunned, their carefully constructed world of transactional philanthropy crumbling around them. Isolde shakes Mr. Moreau's hand, a slow, genuine smile spreading across her face. "Thank you, Mr. Moreau. Your generosity is overwhelming." She pauses, then adds, "But I will be funding my next project myself." She turns her gaze back to Lachlan, her expression now serene and clear. The ice is gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable strength. "Lachlan, I am resigning from my position as artistic director, effective immediately. The Philharmonic is a wonderful institution, but its priorities are no longer my own. I wish you the best of luck." She doesn't wait for the sputtering fallout. She takes Theo's hand, and together they walk away from the shell-shocked board, leaving her empire behind without a single glance over her shoulder. But escaping the boardroom is one thing, escaping the building is another. As they emerge into the main atrium, they are met with a blinding sea of flashing lights and a wall of shouting voices. Reporters, like sharks sensing blood in the water, swarm them. "Ms. Roth, is it true you've resigned? Why did you stop the performance? Who was the man in the janitor's uniform? What was that melody?" The questions hit her like physical blows. The old Isolde would have bulldozed through them with a cold, no comment. But she is not the old Isolde. She squeezes Theo's hand, pulls him a little closer, and stops. The reporters fall silent, hungry for the soundbite. "Tonight," she says, her voice steady and clear, carrying over the clicks of the cameras, "was not about a resignation. It was about a reunion. My son and I are going home." It's not the answer they want, but it's the only one she will give. She holds her head high and walks through the gauntlet, the flashes of the cameras like summer lightning, her son's hand held firmly in hers. She finds Reese in a deserted corridor near the service exit. The chaos of the gala is a distant hum here. He is methodically, almost meditatively, wiping down his cart, a quiet point of calm in her turbulent new reality. He is bringing order to his small corner of the world, just as he did to hers. He looks up as she and Theo approach, and his work-weary face breaks into a slow, beautiful smile. "So," he says softly, "that was quite a performance." "I was terrified," she admits, a breathless laugh escaping her lips. "And I've never felt more alive." She stops in front of him, the space between them charged with everything that has happened, everything that is about to happen. "Thank you, Reese, for showing me a better song to sing." "You found the music yourself," he replies, his eyes full of a warmth that makes her feel seen in a way she never has before. "I just helped you remember the tune." Theo, feeling the safety in the quiet corridor, lets go of his mother's hand and walks up to Reese. "Your song is my favorite," he says clearly. Reese crouches down to be on the boy's level. "I'm glad, Theo. It's my favorite too." Isolde watches them, her heart so full she feels it might burst. "I meant what I said," she tells Reese. "I'm done. I'm walking away from all of it." "That's a brave thing to do," he says, straightening up. "What will you do now?" "I have some ideas," she says, her eyes locking with his. They involve a church basement and a man with a guitar. He chuckles, a low, easy sound. "That sounds like a good plan." "Reese," she says, her voice dropping to a whisper, "come with me." She leads him through a service door and up a flight of stairs she knows leads to a small, deserted terrace overlooking the city. The wind is cool, and the city lights glitter below them like a fallen constellation. Theo and Nina, who has appeared from a staff room where she was waiting, begin a game of chase around the potted plants, their laughter echoing in the night air. Alone for the first time, Reese and Isolde stand by the railing. "I've never done anything like that in my life," she says, looking out at the endless sprawl of the city she once thought she owned. "I've never been so reckless." "It didn't look reckless to me," he says, turning to face her. "It looked like you were finally choosing yourself." "I was choosing my son," she corrects gently. "I was choosing you." The admission hangs in the cool night air between them. He reaches out and gently touches her cheek, his calloused thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. "Isolde," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "For years my life has been about getting through the day, about making sure Nina was okay. I didn't think there was anything else for me. And now," she whispers. "Now," he says, his eyes searching hers, "I feel like I'm at the beginning of the song, not the end." He leans in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She doesn't. She meets him halfway, her hand coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady, strong beat of his heart. Their lips meet, a soft, tentative kiss that is not about passion but about recognition. It's a kiss of homecoming, of two broken halves finally finding their harmony. When they part, they rest their foreheads together, breathing in the same cool air. "So," she says, a smile in her voice, "a new community arts center. I have the capital. And I have a few ideas," he replies, his own smile evident. "And a whole lot of kids who need a place to make noise. They stay there for a long time, watching their children play, planning their future under the stars. Two people from different worlds who found a common key. 6 months later, the sun streams through the vast, floor-to-ceiling windows of a brand new building. The walls are a warm, inviting yellow. The floors are made of soft, polished maple wood, and the air smells of fresh paint and possibility. A beautifully carved sign above the door reads, "The Harmony Project." It's not a church basement. It's a state-of-the-art community music and arts center, built from the ground up with Isolde's fortune and Reese's vision. The opening day party is in full swing. It's a vibrant, joyful scene. Hot dogs sizzle on a grill, and a bouncy castle shakes with the laughter of children. There are no pretenses, no stuffy benefactors, just families from every walk of life, brought together by the promise of a safe space to create. Isolde moves through the crowd, wearing jeans and a simple white blouse, a tray of cookies in her hands. She's not the Roth anymore. She's just Izzy, the woman who knows every child's name. A young girl with bright pink hearing aids runs up to her. "Izzy, can you help me tune my guitar?" she asks. "Of course, Maya," Isolde says, kneeling down to help, her touch now as patient and gentle as Reese's once was with her son. Across the lawn, Reese stands on a small stage, a guitar strapped over his shoulder, leading a sing-along. Nina is beside him, her voice clear and bright. And beside Nina stands Theo, no longer the silent ghost from the gala. He is talkative and vibrant, a leader in his own right among the younger children. He sees a new boy standing alone by the edge of the crowd, looking shy and overwhelmed. It's a look Theo knows well. He hops off the stage, grabs a small djembe drum, and walks over to the newcomer. "It's scary at first," Theo says kindly. "But it's okay to be quiet. You can just listen, or, if you want, you can play this." He holds out the drum. The new boy looks at him, then at the drum, and a tiny, hesitant smile touches his lips as he takes it. Isolde watches the exchange from across the lawn, her heart swelling with a pride so fierce it almost brings her to her knees. She feels Reese come up behind her, his arms wrapping easily around her waist. "Look at him," she whispers. "He's passing it on." "He learned from the best," Reese murmurs into her hair. "Both of his parents." The word parents hangs in the air, feeling solid and real and right. They stand together, watching their children, watching the community they built. Later that evening, when the party has wound down and the last of the families have gone home, the four of them sit together in the main performance hall. It's a beautiful, intimate space with perfect acoustics. Theo is at the grand piano on the stage, picking out a complex, joyful melody he composed himself. Nina sits beside him, adding a surprisingly beautiful harmony with her voice. Reese and Isolde sit in the front row, holding hands, listening to the music of their new life. "You know," Isolde says thoughtfully, leaning her head on his shoulder, "I spent my entire life building an empire of perfection. I thought that was my legacy." "And now," Reese prompts gently. She turns to face him, her eyes shining in the soft stage light. "Now I know a legacy isn't something you build. It's something you grow. It's this." She gestures to their children, to the warm, empty hall waiting for tomorrow's noise, to the life they have nurtured together. "It's messy and it's loud, and it's the most beautiful music I have ever heard." He leans down and kisses her, a deep, loving kiss full of promises kept and a future just beginning. Theo's song comes to a gentle, satisfying close. He looks out at his parents. "How was that?" he asks, beaming. Isolde's heart is too full to speak. Reese squeezes her hand and calls back, his voice full of a father's pride. "It was perfect, son. Absolutely perfect." And in the warm, quiet hall, under the soft glow of the stage lights, the four of them stay, a messy, joyful, perfect family, making their own kind of music together. And that is the end of our story. A story that reminds us that true healing often begins when we have the courage to listen to the quiet voices around us and to the forgotten music within our own hearts. If this story touched you, we would be deeply honored to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from today? Please drop a comment below and let us know. We cherish reading every single one. Your support means the world to us. If you believe in the power of second chances, the strength of family, and the magic of a simple song, please consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. From our hearts to yours, thank you for being here. Until next time, take care, stay kind, and never stop believing in the music that makes you feel whole.